Throughout the last few months, League of Legends has been abused. Not by monetization, not by players flaming junglers, though that one is not that far away, because League has had an entire role abused by smurfing, because people wanna see just how bad it is actually. That's right, today we are talking about AD carries. It is no secret that throughout this entire year, bottom carries have not exactly been able to leave bottom. I mean that both literally and figuratively. It all started when the Noxian season introduced feats of strength. A great mechanic that, in the end, after a few changes, landed well. Though that wasn't the case at the very beginning. Because at the start, feats of strength asked you for just one thing. First blood. Not only was this a fun mechanic in League of Legends because you have a toxic game that asks you to do something really toxic, but you know where you could find the highest chance of getting a first blood? That's right, in the bot lane, where you have two whole targets at the ready. And with AD carries being by far the squishiest, the entire season was about aggression in the bot lane. Now sure, even after changing this feat to 3 kills, it turns out bottom still has 2 targets and sometimes a third one when a jungler comes by. Meaning that bot lane is still getting focused in every game. But at least it's not as bad as it was before. On top of this, AD carries have been victims to quite a few changes to items, from crit stat changes, to tank buster removals, to survivability just getting reworked in general. And all of this resulted in a single thing. Everyone agreeing that AD carries might be the worst role in the game. You are at the mercy of your support, who is having way more fun than you do, by the way. You're usually waiting for late game to really shine, meaning that for the most part, you spend 20 minutes in the game clicking on minions. At that point, one could argue that even top lane is having more fun. And all of that was given the most attention during Dante's now infamous Unranked to Challenger challenge. In case you are able to blissfully miss this, Dantes, as a full-time jungler one-trick, always had a beef with marksman, being someone who is forced to endure the flaming of the entire game. He figured that bot lane, and especially AD carries, complained about everything the most. This led to him having quite a few viral clips talking about AD carries, none of which I can actually show you for obvious reasons. I don't think PG-16 would be able to handle that. And so to prove that AD carries are complaining about nothing, and that the role is not only fine but also among the easiest roles in the game, Dante started his own challenge. He would climb as an AD carry. Well, we soon realized that Challenger might have been a bit too much of a challenge. So eventually the challenge became Unranked to Master as an AD carry. Long story short, it did not go well. It turns out bot lane is not an easy role, and Dantes heavily struggled to get out of Diamond 4. And eventually, he gave up. This all ended with his statement after he quit with 600 games played. There he admitted that yes, AD carry was the hardest role in the game, he was wrong about his itemization, and he called supports words. So what if I tell you that a support decided to tackle this challenge and he succeeded? That's right, after this entire social experiment with bot lane started, there were many more streamers who decided to take on this Unranked to Master challenge to see if AD carries are really that bad or if the entire role is fine. And that perhaps maybe Dantes just didn't lock in. In fact, connected to all the recent debates, it is these Unranked to Master challenges that spark the entire debate around smurfing. Because in order for you to do this, you kinda do need a fresh account to prove that you are not skipping ranks. You wouldn't just buy an account, right? Right? And so a lot of people started slowly succeeding at these challenges, with one of them bringing up very interesting numbers. And that would be Azzapp. In case you don't know who Azzapp is, he became known for only one simple thing, playing nothing but Vel'Koz, which I have to admit is something highly respectable. Of course, he originally started mid lane because that's where Vel'Koz used to be, but eventually it moved into bottom, as the meta dictates. Overall, Azzapp was simply really good at landing skill shots and setting up combos. But as I mentioned, while this means that he is a support main, that wasn't always the case because Vel'Koz is just swapping lanes however right wants. Now, because during Dante's challenge supports were being called words, Azzapp decided to tackle this challenge to see if he actually understands the lane from the perspective of the other role. And so, his climb as an AD carry started in July. And it started strong. He got to Platinum in almost no time. With the fascinating thing being that he did this while still trying all the different champions. He followed this with quite a few paragraphs of information. So to give you a quick summary, he learned that at low elo you should be just picking champions that scale into the late game, because in general people are worse at closing games. He also learned that the skills that you need to play an AD carry are almost the same regardless of what champion you play. In comparison, if you have a look at jungle, those champions are vastly different with different playstyles. After which he also mentioned that he's curious about Diamond, because that's when people will likely learn how to punish him. And as I mentioned, in this screenshot you can see that he didn't stick to a single champion. He was still experimenting, which means he tried everything. And then, about a week later, he actually just got to master. Just like that, no biggie. And the stats he got out of it are fascinating. He mentioned that he tried just about every comp because he wanted to learn everything. And with all of that, he still maintained a 63% win rate. And he even gave us his own tier list based on his experience, with Cassiopeia here being Yunara. I have to say, I am slightly surprised that Ziggs is so high, but I am not surprised about Smolder. Apparently, overall, the entire challenge took him about 2 weeks, which really sounds crazy, until you learn that it took him about 129 games. That is a lot of games being played in a 2-week period. But then it gets interesting. Could have been both better and faster, but I decided to limit myself in a lot of ways. Every game was played on stream, no delay, no minimap cover, no dodge. And I played only AD carry champs even when filled top, jungle and mid. I have tried basically every AD carry champ as I wanted to experience as much as possible. Did a lot of goofy mistakes on first time Aphelios, Kalista, Neela and so on. I have to say, streaming all of this without safety nets such as covering your minimap is crazy. There is a reason Riot is still trying to figure out stream sniping protection. This has been enlightening and insanely fun. Tackling new problems and figuring out how to carry from AD carry marksman perspective. I still maintain that for 99.5 percentile and below, discipline is the #1 skill to have as an AD carry. Oh, so that's what Dante's was missing. Take only good fights, avoid getting baited by nonsense, have a clear goal in mind. Aim for spikes and over-communicate, but not in a condescending way. That is an impossible task to ask from a bot lane. You're talking like a person who's meditating. You think bot lane is doing that? This arc was some of the most fun I've had on stream. And I can tell people also enjoyed it as the viewerships and subs skyrocketed. In 3 days I will be going on a vacation, and when we return, we will push AD carry role to Challenger. That's right, apparently he is not done yet and he will try Challenger. Which again, he wouldn't be the first person to do this. Challengers constantly swap roles to get more interesting content for them, I guess. And at this point, Tyler isn't even the only person to get Challenger in all 5 roles. About 5 months ago, Drutut got it as well. Which is where some funny numbers come in. When Tyler did his challenge, support was by far his fastest role. He said it was basically free. Which makes sense because he is a Draven main. He would have a good understanding on what to do as a support, which should indicate that a support main should also understand AD carries. But Drutut was a bit more varied. I mean, look, it's an Akshan mid main. What do you want me to say? And so in his numbers, support took him the longest, with AD carry being on the 3rd place right in the middle. Which makes me wonder, since Azzapp is going for a challenger as well, will his numbers be closer to Tyler? Because it should be mirroring the support perspective. Or will his challenge prove what Drutut saw? With the fact being that AD carries are just about your average role. They are right in the middle, with the catch being that it might be the most toxic place in the game right now. But despite that, if you have a look at the pure numbers, the lane should be fine. And so that's where we are currently standing with League's newest social experiment. We get a bunch of streamers who are willingly playing AD carries, that is despite that role being the worst place in League, because either they think it is good content, or because they believe it is not as bad as people say, in which case it is also good content. So looking at these numbers all together, if there is one thing that I got out of this, it's the fact that I should be probably streaming playing AD carries.